You're listening to the Artist Athlete Podcast, episode 84. This podcast is dedicated to Circus. It's a place for professionals in the industry to share their stories, viewpoints, and information, and a place for outsiders to get a sneak peek into this world. Hey, friends, fans, and enemies. I'm Shannon McKenna. I'm the host of the Artist Athlete Podcast and the founder of theartistathlete.com. Summer's got one more month in it, and that means I am still chilling over at circustalk.com. Circus Talk is an amazing platform. It's international, inclusive, a bunch of other great I words as well. It's a one-stop shop for all of your circus information, needs, news, whatever you want to know about circus. Circus Talk will have it. And what I love about them is they're not just historical. They're not just trying to tell you, what shows are out. It's not like a playbill. They're actually exploring issues within the circus community, such as sexual abuse. They recently had an article that highlighted an amazing Instagram account called Victims Voices Circus, which talks about some of the sexual abuse that has been happening in the circus industry. It's totally anonymous. I probably should have said trigger warning before I started talking about this, but I think it's really cool that it exists because our industry is unregulated, and that means that in order to protect ourselves and each other, we have to know. And now we have a way to find out, because God forbid we should be able to just do our job and be able to trust the law if we are violated by a coach, by a osteopath or physical therapist, by a fellow cast member, by a director. But we'll get there. For now, let's keep talking. Victims Voices Circus is the Instagram account. Thank you, Circus Talk, for highlighting them. And thank you for hosting me on your little platform. I love it. And thank you to everyone on patreon.com/theartistathlete. All my Patreons, you guys are amazing. You're so amazing that I'm not going to talk too much about you today because we have to go over the entire history of China. And we have to go over the entire history of China because I have an amazing guest today, and we talk about his training at the Nanjing Circus School. And I feel like I want to give a bit of background. I've done this before and got really good feedback on it when I did it. I was in Cambodia and talking about the Phar Circus and what happened during the Cambodian genocide and why and how the Phar Circus came to be. That's episode 44 if you want to go back. But I think it's really helpful because, as you've heard even so far on this podcast, circus doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's informed by the world around it and the expectations of how we are treated as artists, as how we interact with each other and with the world changes based on what's happening politically, socially, scientifically, all the other lees. They're all influences. Everything that's happened in history has informed circus enough that's led you to be interested in listening to my ass talk about it for like an hour or so every week. So let's dive in. Okay, so I'm going to do this real fast. There's actually a really good website I'm going to go to, and then I'm going to link it in the show notes. But it's from Business Insider, and it has a bunch of pictures about what China looked like before the Chinese Revolution. Basically, there was a big dynasty. They were called the Qing Dynasty. And they ruled China for a really, really long time. And as the rest of the world started to modernize, and the Qing Dynasty was still in this kind of like feudal system where it was a bunch of very impoverished people who had to pay tribute to the different lords around, kind of like the Middle Ages in Europe. While people started leaving China in mass droves, they started leaving the country to find better lives other places. And the dynasty tried to stop them from leaving, and there was a big famine and everybody got real pissed. And the last emperor of China was like 2 years old when he was named the emperor of China. And then like 4 years later, the military overthrew him. And then from like 1912 to 1949, there were a bunch of world wars. There were a bunch of parties in China fighting over. And then one party won, and the party was the Communist Party, and it was led by a dude named Mao Zedong. So Mao Zedong comes to power, and he's like, cool. I have all these people who've been living in this feudal world for millennia, and now I have to figure out how to explain to them this new ideology that I've decided this entire country is going to live under. And he did that by funding the crap out of the arts, including, but not limited to, circus. So they set up schools for visual arts, for opera, for circus, all over the country, in all the different regions, in all the different cities. They all had their own troupes. And these troupes had enough funding to establish schools that lasted for, in this case, 5 years, where they trained artists. And they found their artist from the children of all these poor and feudal workers. And one of these artists' names was Guang Rong Lu. And Mr. Lu is my guest today. And no, I did not pronounce his name correctly. Mr. Lu was one of 5 children. His father was a professional player of a 2-stringed version of the violin who worked in a performing arts complex in Shanghai. As a child, he was extremely skinny and flexible, and in 1965, he impressed 2 auditioners from the Nanjing troupe. A month later, a letter arrived inviting him to Nanjing. Given his parents' blessing, Lu began his working life while most of his siblings remained at school. For 22 years, Lu performed 5 or 6 shows a week. In that time, he traveled overseas on more than 30 occasions, including 2 trips to Australia in the 1980s. During one of these cultural exchange programs, he assisted in creating the Flying Fruit Fly Circus, or the Fruit Fly Circus as we know it today. Beyond that, he implemented training plans and procedures that led him to take the position as the lead trainer in the pilot project, which led to the establishment of the National Institute for Circus Arts in Melbourne, Australia. Mr. Lu's passion for teaching and imparting his knowledge to students and staff alike has seen NICA develop into Australia's Centre of Excellence in Contemporary Circus Arts Training. So based on this background, it shouldn't surprise you at all when you listen to this interview that Mr. Lu has a very strong Chinese-Australian accent. I definitely want to say give it a minute to normalize in your brain just his speaking patterns and what he sounds like, because I know it's not always comfortable or easy to listen to people who don't sound like you, but his story is so unique. And it's such a privilege to be able to share it with all of you that I really encourage you to take the time and give it a listen. Here's my interview with Guang Rong Lu. I want to make sure I'm saying your name correctly. Can you say it for me?
My surname is Lu, L-U. My given name is Guang Rong.
Guang Rong.
Yeah, it's hard for you, but it's all right. Guang Rong, it's very good. You did very good.
Guang Rong. Mr. Lu, welcome to the Artist Athlete Podcast. Can I call you Mr. Lu?
Yeah, that's easy. In school, everybody called Mr. Lu. It's easy for everyone.
Who are you and what do you do? Can you introduce yourself a little bit? You said it a little bit at the beginning, but just for the record.
Okay, I was born in China, in Shanghai. I joined the circus school in 1965.
How old were you at 1965?
I was 11.
You were 11. Okay.
I was 11. So I'm at 66 now. So this year is my 55 years working in circus. And currently I'm holding a position as a director of international engagement. Before that, I was head of circus study for the school. So I'm promoting school and helping the graduates get a job and promoting the course internationally.
Let's start from the beginning then.
Yeah,
at 11 years old, how did you find circus? How did circus find you?
It's you need to understand a little bit the background of Chinese government or Chinese as a nation. Before the communists took over China, the nation is just a dirt. the communists took over the country. They starting building that country again. So the communists believe that all the literacy and the performing arts, so they put lots of money in. So they set up lots of schools, are public funded, set up lots of companies, it's public funded, state funded. By 1965, that's already 16 years of establishment of the People's Republic of China. And the school was, because they fully funded, the company is starting to make intake of students. So in 1965, I was attracted for the school as a kids. You play, and
Hmm.
also it's financially really good because when I start my school, I don't need to pay school fee. I don't need to pay accommodation. I've been paid for study.
Did you have to audition or were you selected? How did you? Because
I,
my understanding is in circus, especially back then in China, it was a very honored position to be an artist.
Yeah, they
Okay.
audition you. They audition
You
you and
audition.
watch your
Okay.
schoolwork, watch your
Uh
body
huh.
condition. I was very skinny, extremely skinny. So they say, "Wow, that's the body type we're looking for." So then I starting into the
Okay.
school for 5 years, a full time study.
Wow.
So
And what did that 5 years look like? Like, what did you
it
study? What did you
yeah,
train?
it is. And I give you the idea of the schedule. The schedule is really tough. You're starting up at 5:30 in the morning every day.
Ugh,
5:30, you get
okay.
into gym and then starting training. And then come out, you starting washing, brush your teeth, wash your face, and have a shower, and have a breakfast. So you're training before your breakfast. Then after breakfast, you go for another training. Then lunchtime. Lunchtime is a huge break, 3 hours break. So you actually have a sleep.
Yeah, I bet.
That's very,
I
very
would
common.
definitely need a nap after 2 training sessions before lunch. Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. And then the afternoon, you study the normal schooling, like
Okay.
then you have dinner, and at night you do another study or training. You're very tough schedule for
Yeah.
5 years. So after that 5 years, you almost can't dealing with any hardship.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a military school type of living. You're living in a school. You got someone wash your clothes. You got a canteen. Food was prepared.
Wow.
Yeah, that's all the way of in Shanghai school. They still does it.
So currently, that's still the system that someone washes your clothes and you have a canteen for food. And when you're training at the Shanghai school.
Shanghai school student, they very well paid.
Wow.
You don't pay fee.
Right.
You don't pay staff fees. And the school was you can go on the internet check the Shanghai school.
Hmm.
They got a facility is amazing
Why did the communist government invest so much money into circus?
because they believe that they believe that this is a part of a need for society. This is a part of to improve your well-being, and as an arts form,
Huh.
it's a part of a spiritual need. They very much believe literacy, universities, performing arts, it's all part of governing part of human thought.
Huh.
So they invest lots of money, but some as the US, quite a lot of money invest into university, because every US is a capitalist country, but philosophy of capitalist, behavior or action are still being go through into the school system.
Yeah,
So it's the same as in China. The communism or socialist
I see.
is a foundation
Right.
philosophy for that nation.
Yeah.
So they use this assistant to getting through, educating. The words is educating, or you say the brainwash, whichever you put. But you actually benefit from such a funding.
Well, and the other difference, or my understanding is from talking to other people who have become circus artists under communist regimes, whether in China or in Mongolia, Russia, is that you are paid for your training in school. And the assumption is when you finish your training, you also still work for the state.
Yeah, yes, you
Is that
straight away
correct?
into the company. You straight away into the
Yeah.
company. Yeah, the company interview you and as a future potential artist. Then they send you to the school. Yeah, they put you into school, and after 5 years, the company take over. You actually as a member of the company.
Does the company also, do they say like, we need another foot juggler
Yeah.
or we need another contortion? Like, how do they choose your discipline? Or do
The,
you choose your discipline?
the teacher was come from a company. They work in the school, and they will, according to your condition, according to your interests, they will suggest you do certain things. And then you also have your own interests to choose what you like to do. And most time, the teacher have much more influence on what you choose than
I
the
see.
individual. Yeah, it's not like in US. I enjoy doing this one, but it's kind of agree with the way they choose. They nominating or suggest you to do, because they are more experienced in term of what you're suitable.
Oh, yeah, totally. No, I wish that someone had just told me what to do.
Yeah, because I found when I teaching in CERA program in National Institute, I changed a little bit the way of what we learned in reflection to Australian. Because some people, they really not clear what they're suitable for, what type of discipline they want to learn. They just force you to accept what they want to choose. Then you say that you try to convince them, you may choose not suitable things for yourself. In the end, after 2 years, you realized you only got a 3 year study. Then people start talking about equal opportunity. I have a freedom to choose what I to do. And I say, totally agree with what you say, but you still need to reflect your own condition. We got a guy about 100, 180, 190 kilos. He want to do double trapeze as a fly. And I said,
Huh.
okay, we go through the physical condition, but we also need to go through the wide differentiation. If your base normally have 30 kilo different, and the
Right.
flying and the base, you have 30 kilo different, the base it would be, 30 kilo heavier than the fly. It says, 190 kilo, where I'm found a base for you. You need a person 200 to 230 or kilo.
But aren't those numbers based on like technique, like more dynamic work?
Yeah.
Like if you have a flyer who's heavier, then I would assume that if you wanted to proceed, you would probably have to find, like different things to do on the apparatus.
Yeah. But one of the selection criteria, you need the weight difference different. You need a part of consideration. Yeah.
Okay, so this is standardized for you.
Yeah. And same as a
Okay.
cardio, same as flying, and
Mm.
who gonna be throw around a person 190 kilo?
Well, I don't know, but maybe their act isn't about throwing. Maybe it's about extreme flexibility, or maybe it's about plate spinning when you're a flyer on a trapeze. I would watch that act. I think you'd have to come up with something else. You'd have to be very creative.
No, that's what you say. I totally agree. Why am I agreeing? We're actually doing this one. We believe in China. I don't believe in here. I believe, and every single person have a chance in circus to finding out things that they good on and that they enjoy it. So the selection criteria for particular discipline, you need reflecting to more things than just the physical condition. Physical condition is one thing. Second thing is what people enjoy to do, and the third thing
Okay.
is how we open up the limitation, the way of thinking. I'll give you one example. One of a student, big size, 180 kilo. He wanna specialize in handstands, and then I measure up his body proportion. When you do handstands, you need a kind of a light in leg. You want people have a flexibility. You want people have a powerful up body, but he don't have that. But he's very good at tumbler. Yeah, so then I started thinking, okay, how can I mix in tumbling and handstands? So you change the angle to address your act. Instead of your purely handstands approaching, you're approaching the tumbling, movement, and handstands. So you still can producing quite a nice act in different element. You change the element of a particular act, and they come out quite nicely. And also, I'll give you another example. In art teaching straps, I'm quite good on the strap, and I got a quite good strap student. I got a girl, and yes, very flexible, not much power on the up body, and insist wants to strap. And then I said, okay, if that's the things you choose, what we best can helping you. So you're starting changing the teaching program. Instead, you use lots of up body power, but you use the middle of your body and to come up your different way of use the strap. So you still can come up with quite nice routine and it's still on upright of strap, but you use different body. You have to coming up with different routine.
Yeah.
So that's actually open another door for you to address.
And one could argue also, like, if you invent something new or come up with something new because you're a different body type on an apparatus, it makes you more valuable because no one else does it
Yeah,
that way, because no one else has sat down and thought that they could.
yeah. In lots of approaching, I have quite lots of this example in my school. I believe in Western society, they very individualized.
Yeah.
In the society, I don't want to be viewed by, I'm similar to someone else. So we have a common program in the vast approaching common program. We also emphasis on helping the individual to achieve their dream. We have a common approach and says what juggler condition you need, what handstand condition you need, what fly condition you need, but we're also accommodating. So that is really a part of the creative process. If you mechanically stuck with the program, you're not going to be a creative.
Sure.
So when creating a teaching way, accommodating individual is the way to go to bring the difference.
Something that I love watching whenever Demain has, a circus troupe from China, or I've even been on shows where they've had circus troupes from China who
Yeah,
were like the tumblers, and I was the aerialist in the show,
yeah.
and always I think that there's something really special about a communal act or these really large, like a
Yeah, yeah,
banking act, these really large
yeah, yeah,
scale acts, but they're also kind of like you're talking about in the West, we all want to be individuals, but also it's very hard to afford the troupe that could perform that act because there's not the money that there is in like a communist country for that work,
yeah. No,
you know?
it's very typical. When I teaching a theatrical act in Australia,
Uh-huh.
in my school, and the school, everybody's staying for 3 years.
Yeah.
It's no problem. Uh, but I tell them, I said, after school, you people going to be going different direction. You're not going to be stuck together. By understanding that one, so what I do, I signing agreement with the student. I says, if you want to be teaching a TDBO, you need to agree. You're going to make a commitment. If you cannot make a commitment, you tell me it's 4 o'clock, you have to go to work. And what happened was another 12 people, missing out you, and you're middle of the catching part. If you do that, there's not much point.
Yeah.
You do it.
Sure.
But then I said, I'm still teaching you based on one reason. You may join the group of a particular circus. I teaching you go through in different position for different part of the entire teachable act. Hopefully, you can learn different part of it.
Interesting.
When you team people staying together, you can present an act at a school setting. But if you go out, you have the capacity to join another teachable group.
Yeah, and then you can be more marketable or because you can fill in any spot in that teeter board
Yeah,
group. Yeah. In China, did they teach you all the different, like if you were a teeter board, or I can think of 1,000 examples or thoughts like this. But did they approach that the same, or were you always like the
No,
flyer, or you always
no,
touched the teeter board? Or
no
yeah,
way. No way they were approaching you
interesting.
in the way we are doing in Australia. Because in Australia, you have to, same as in US.
Okay. I mean, I
You
actually
need
think
a,
that Australia and the US are like kind of a very difficult comparison because the funding in Australia actually is far better than the US. So,
yeah, no, yeah, it is, it is.
but Nika is
Yeah,
beautiful. I've been to Nika. Yeah.
you've been to Naka,
Yeah,
yeah.
twice.
And when we start, there's nothing. They just car park. And
In a car
nothing.
park. Hey.
The entire building was funded by federal government.
Wow.
And the running cost is still, 70 or more than 70% was the federal government money.
Wow. The running
And
cost 70% is federal government. Okay.
yeah, because it's not, it just has to be appreciated. You are landing in Australia. If I retire from this school, and you can't ask anymore as an artist, as a performer, and how luxury you getting, and you get a full-time employment for over 20 years. How you have that consistent helping you to develop your arts form, and without, I'm need to get it into restaurant, do some more waitering, and then I'm back to training. You don't need to do that with the
Right,
luxury.
right.
How luxury having in Western society. Yeah, this is in communist society, in socialist society, you get that. The good parts always attached with some limitations.
What do you think the limitations are?
Limitation, you need to do the things they ask you to do
Okay.
because you've been paid.
So, what was your discipline when you were in school
I done
performing?
I because I'm in the circuit for so many years, I did so many
Did everything.
different acts.
Okay.
Yeah, I did the main thing is my handstands act. I do
Handstand.
chairs, stuck chair. Handstands acts. I also i- the Chinese pole.
Yeah.
We put a Chinese pole skill onto the perch, so all the Chinese pole skill onto the pole on the shoulder.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, that is developed in the 1963.
Uh-huh.
Move transferred all the skill onto on the shoulder pole. In here they call perch.
Yeah.
I was done by me and my friends in 1973. So
Cool.
we actually didn't need rigging the pole. We can just put on shoulder doing it.
So you left school and you had all these disciplines and you were with the Nanjing troupe and you traveled all around the world. Okay, so and I'm just now thinking like back to when I performed and was on shows with Chinese troops, they always stuck together. They had a translator, but
Yeah.
it seemed like, yeah, they were very separate from everybody else. And I always wondered why.
No, it's very much a cultural reason
Okay.
than anything else. And also, because they starting very young age, you kind of get a family member type of feels. I still have very close relationship with people who are many of my company staff now living in US and Australia. But when you're getting together, you still feel that you're part of it.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't feel you left the company, so you're always staying together. You got that really strong emotional emotional connections. So they're very easily stuck together,
Yeah.
and then they have limitation to understanding other part of member of troop when you go to the say it's Cunnies, say it's the Cirque du Soleil.
Yeah.
Even they join the Cirque du Soleil, they kind of they're still stuck together.
Yeah.
They're not good at how to be a part of a Cirque du Soleil in the community.
Yeah.
They form a small community. It's a part of cultural things.
Sure.
And as the time goes on, more globalization happening.
Yeah.
People starting to have a tool to communicating with each other.
Uh-huh.
Because if you don't speak English, it's really hard to get it mixed into the mainstream.
Yeah.
Because most time you just lost the meaning. So after a few times you talk to people, you don't understand them, they don't understand you. So you lost interest.
Sure. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah,
Huh.
yeah. So that's it's not It's not a political reason other than the cultural barrier.
And actually, it kind of sounds really nice to have gone through almost like, I mean, we compared it to military earlier, but that you really do have this feeling of fraternity or this bond with these people. I'm
Yeah,
thinking about like my experience in a kind of type of circus school. We don't really have circus schools in the US, but preparatory programs
yeah,
and other places where, like you're saying, very individualized.
yeah. But you move on, you move on. You move on, you move on. But in Chinese company, like when I go home China to visit the company,
Hmm.
any company, any company, I tell them who I am, what I did, where I come from. They straight away treat you like a part of any company. So in here, people encourage. That's the philosophy of Western society. They encouraging the individual freedom, individual many things.
Right.
But in here, in Chinese culture, they believe if you don't have a nation to helping you, then your family not good, not good.
Yeah.
If your family not good, individual not good.
Mm.
So therefore, when they brought up will be told says what do you do? Oh, you have to in line with your future your family member, not
Mm.
just yourself. Your family, if your family wants a good life in this country, you need help in the country.
Mm.
So for I put it this way: say if you want to have we use a bowl for food, but if the wok don't have a food, and your bowl not going to have food. So we believe if you want to have enough to eat, make sure the wok, the cooking, they have enough food, than just for yourself.
Hmm.
So you need to think about the group before individual.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing in China if you are so selfish personality.
Huh.
People don't want to talk to you. But in here, we're encouraging the difference. We're encouraging the individualism. It's really a cultural philosophy things. The group is more important than the individual.
And it's interesting to think about how that comes through in circus as well. So why did you then go from China like to Australia?
There's a very complicated reason. One of the reasons I was touring in Australia in 1980s, and then I did a training project with Flying for Fly Circus. We was introduced lots of way of teaching different acts into fruit flies, which made a huge impact because they didn't have a group approaching how to systemically approaching how to building up a circus act, a circus school, and a circus training. They not yet have that in the early stage in Australia. The owner of Cirque du Soleil, the guy, that person called Guy,
Yeah.
yeah, he actually come to the workshop in 83, 84.
Oh, so like Cirque du Soleil was like super baby new.
It's very new, and then there's a documentary called Great Leap Forwards.
Uh-huh.
It's produced by Mark Willis, and who is Australian television, the bigger figures, that broadcast internationally. That project really gave a big challenge in Australian contemporary circus because they offer lots of tools.
I have a question for you because I've studied at the San
Yeah,
Francisco
yeah.
Circus Center with Chinese acrobatic coaches who are wonderful. But I remember speaking to Xiaohang once and him talking about how different it was to train Americans because
Oh, very different.
can't be as like tough or you can't make them do as many things. Did you find that with Australians as well?
I face the same problem, but I have a different approach.
Oh, okay.
You need to believe that unless you enjoy the work, otherwise you're getting nowhere.
Hmm.
Okay. So based on that understanding, how you make a program interesting,
Hmm.
how you make a program enjoyable,
Okay.
how you make a program a part of their ownership. But the student need to believe that program is really my program. The motivation is it's a life philosophy approaching and encouragement
Yeah.
and a personality and a relationship with the student and the future employment
Uh-huh.
and the enjoyment, achievement, all that consideration you need to put in to helping your student. You not just ask, say, I want to do 20 times. Why are you not doing it? It will not. You probably get it once or twice. You're not going to every time get it. But you need a overall understanding, approaching to your student. And every day, my students just come waiting for the hour they come with me because they need to totally enjoy that part of acts, not just to learn the skill. They also enjoy the way you talk to them,
Yeah.
the way you approach them, the way you're helping them to understanding the future life and the future life philosophy, and that way you're helping them to understand what they should do for their career. And I also telling my students, I say this is a very financially very uncertain career. You know, one day you get a job, the next day you don't have a job.
Yeah.
You know, you get another job, and you're very uncertain. I said, so if you want to enjoy staying in this industry, you need to creating financial stability. Otherwise, you just bolted out. You're not going to be survived.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not a part of physical teaching, but that's a helping in overall as an individual, how they grow up. So I never believed the Circus teaching is just I'm teaching skill.
Mm.
You're not getting much if you thinking you're just teaching skill. You be a friend, you be their student, because you need to understand what they're thinking. You need to understand that where they come from. You know, as a teacher, you need to understand where they want heading to. But that's overall helping is as a key for as a trainer, as a director, as a school educator to helping your student. You not just come here. I've not just come here for make a wage. You can make wage somewhere else, but if you as a teacher, you have a fundamental responsibility to helping your student how to grow
Yeah.
from a teenager to adults, from a normal person become an artist. So you have overall, you have so much attachment to helping your student. So that's the way I'm approaching teaching here, and I continue to talk to. I used to running the school. I continue to talk to my staff. That's the philosophy. You need to always come with you. So that's really different way working or teaching in China. So this is very particular way we're developing in Australia.
Interesting. But you don't think that in China you had teachers who enjoyed teaching and developed you guys?
They almost like they are superior.
Okay. Huh.
Yeah. So you don't have that kind of. I regarding a student. If I take on student, the first thing I do, I want to be a student of that person. I need learning from that person. Then you come up with a reasonable approaching to help your student. If you think I'm just coming and teaching a skill, no, I don't think you're getting too far if you have that attitude. But
Yeah.
at least I don't believe that way. But anyway, I moved to Australia. There's many different reasons. One of the reasons I developed a very good relationship with Australian. I got a permanent visa very easy. I feel pretty comfortable living in Australia because it's much closer than US. When I go back to Shanghai, it's only 9 hours airplane. But also, Australia is quite a friendly country in term of they don't have class. Like a European, you have really class, very clear. You feel the different class of people.
Uh-huh.
But in Australia,
Interesting. Yeah.
because what they call stompy people. They don't. You tell them you do circus, and in Europe they don't necessarily give you high or reasonable regard. And then they have a class, from a past 100, 1,000 years. You got a royal family, you got it this way, you got that way, and then you're six clown, you're on the dirt. And that culture is still there in Europe, but in Australia you don't have that much.
Interesting.
In Australia you're more flattened. So everybody regard each other with a big respect. They will say, "Oh, that's an interesting job, and it's amazing." And then tell us what do you do. Now they quite a comfortable society.
You mentioned at the beginning you are now responsible for like international relations at the National Institute of
Yeah,
Circus Arts. What does that entail?
it's a connecting with different companies, different institute, and promoting NACA. And, but this job is funny job. one must say it's a funny job because everywhere I go and I comfortable approaching anybody, particularly in China, in Vietnam. So I'm just walking in, people knows me or I knows them. And promoting a school and their value and what they're about it. And also promoting that graduate into different market, different companies. Because, for example, in China, there's 2,300 theme parks now.
Wow.
But half of them will going to be bankruptcy. You're not going to be sustained that many. But that means lots of demand. And I got a call for example, Van Dai, you maybe heard, they work with the Franco Dugong.
Yeah.
They have lots of theme park. And the company called Fuxing, they bought a part of Cirque du Soleil.
Uh-huh.
That is a huge company. They have lots of theme park as well.
So is it like you're like an agent for graduates of NICA?
No, I'm not agent because I'm being paid. I'm on the wage. It's just promotion. Hopefully, the seats can signing out.
Okay.
When I introduce anyone to any company, they got a job. I don't take any commission.
Right. I guess I didn't mean. I'm sorry. I didn't mean like from a financial perspective as an agent, but more that you're representing the students of the school to these thousands of theme parks in China. I don't know why it didn't occur to me that there were so many.
Because a lot of my older friends, because I've been in the industry for 50 years, lots of my friends now, they all are younger or older than me. They're all in the management position for different shows.
Very cool. And then on the other side, it sounds like also you are responsible for kind of being the face of NICA for prospective students. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
If you want an intake, and then you first looking at what is the outcome. If you can explain the outcome for example, the parents were first asking, if my kids come to your school and what is the future. The future perspective, you have to be very clearly demonstrated. Because the circus has an essential part, you do it as a circus, but you also have attachment and a relationship with the other profession. So you're not just limited into your circus parts. You need to show people's perspective. If you have a circus degree, you can further study in physical education. You can further study in other arts form. You can further study. You can do master in drama or in a film directing. In terms of a career, make living. Says, for example, make living. How you make living out of this school, and then you need to provide lots of information. When the parents and the students see that future possibility, unless you see the future, you're not going to jump into it.
Right.
So that's the first thing. The first thing is you need to work on. And whatever the information you give to them, and in the future, it has to be proved it's true. It's what he says honestly happened. Because you then tell people, come to this school, you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever the future, bright. And then they're out of school, they got nothing, got no job. Then your school going to be collapsed. Yeah, you're not going to sustain.
Yeah.
So the outcome is the most important information, how to summarize, put together, and presenting to the perspective of your student. Until they see that part of it, you have to convince people to come to this school.
Sure.
The second thing is that you really need to convert what they have. For example, gymnasts, swimmer, dancer, musicians, all that type of people have been training for many, many years. After that training many years, they can't see the future. So what happens? They quit. They learn other profession in university. But if you can link what they have been trained, skill, or whatever they've been developed, is continued benefits through the school study, through their future career, then they will do it. Because they don't want wasting what they enjoyed to do for example, for our little kids did 10 years of gymnasts. Ask them to give up, it's a hard one. But ask them to continue, it's a hard one too.
Well, and I'm really curious to know what you say to people who are you trying to recruit, or like parents or people who you want to come to the school now? Because I feel like I don't know what it's like in Australia, but in most of what I've seen is a lot of companies, a lot of the work that artists have had for so long has kind of collapsed. So you really kind of see how vulnerable circus arts and a career in the performing arts can be.
When I come to Australia, very quickly I realized if I don't do the circus, what I do, I got nothing left. Once you realize I was 32, 34, and I can't even speak English, I thought, well, that's not the way to stay in Australia. You better you go back home or you learn more. So if you as a student come to the school, you need a very individualized, attractive skill acts that you can jump into a existing company for 10 or 15 years. But within that 15 years, you really need to thinking about your future. Because you need to convert what your skill you have in now into the future career.
Yes.
Because circus is not going to, you're not going to be do good when you're 60. I'm a lucky one. I'm at 66, still, doing a circus, still teaching and helping. I was really lucky one. Not many people have that career-long continuation working, but I'm never looking for a job. I always got a job, come to me, and never unemployed for 55 years, not even one day. So unless you continue thinking and improve yourself, you can jump into different profession. You need to enjoy the circus part as artist, and also you need to use a circus part as platform helping you for the future a career that relevant to performing arts or education. So that's I will put. If you don't have that capacity, you may, as you say, lots of people collapse.
Yeah.
At the end of the performing career, don't know where to go other than to have a fish and chip shop.
Which isn't such a bad life either, I think. We all need more fish and chips, so why not?
Yeah, but it's a really tiring job.
Compared to circus, I don't know.
If you can survive in the circus, you surely be able to survive all kind of job. But the circus is an enjoyable profession. Circus is evolving.
Yeah.
Circus actually, become something else, different than before, than 100 or 200 years ago, or even 50 years ago. A circus is very quickly become a mainstream a part of a society. Before the circus was, they have their own society.
Yeah.
It got nothing to do with mainstream.
Right.
But now it's more likely to be part of.
Do you think that's true internationally, like all over?
Yeah, because one of the reasons when I helping set up NACA is first, the circus profession never have a chance as a mainstream part of education. You have to pay people. You have to do workshop. The workshop is not a government-funded organization. And you don't have, say, Australia, you have all the study, and you don't pay fee until you're working. But before, you pay fee on the spot. So that's one thing. Second thing is because you don't have a what's called the formal ladder of education in a qualification framework. In my view, study 5 years in circus, it's more harder than study an entire course of 1 degree.
Sure.
Yeah, because when you do a degree, when you learn book, you continue reading it, you continue to do it, then you get it. But in circus, lots of skill action, it doesn't matter how much you do, you never get it. So everybody experiences that. So when the people ask me, and how you speak English, I say, well, that's easy. It's far easier than learn the handstands. By far. Yeah,
oh, that's funny.
Yeah, because the English, you just keep reading it, you're learning it, and then
Right.
remember it, you read it, you're following the cassettes, you just continue following that sounds, you keep reading it, you get it. But the handstands learning, you do 10 minutes, and next day you do the same. Next day you do the same. Yeah, if you have that experience, learning a language shouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
But anyway, we've been talking for a long time. Nice to talk to you.
Yes, I want to ask you one last question, which is what advice would you give to yourself at the beginning of your career?
Beginning of your career, okay. As I said
Yeah.
before, before you choose any career, you really need a serious thinking about the outcome. And you need to ask so many people to helping you to define what is the outcome if you jump into it.
Is that something that you did when you were 11? Did you ask a bunch of people, like,
I would
should I
not.
become a circus artist?
I wish someone will have have access to someone talk to me as this. In my time, is really, I tell you, it's not embarrassing. It's really a good job being paid, because by that time, not just in China, the entire world, many countries, is really in such poor status. You get a job, you can pay. You just thanks for them. But in now, people not necessary to study a profession for the food. They more likely for the enjoyment. But when the enjoyment coming in, you need a serious, okay, in the long term, financially sustained. So that's the outcome is most important.
Do you think the quality of circus, and I don't even know how you would measure quality, but I'm just curious to hear your perspective, and then I will let you
Okay.
go, I promise. But this is just so interesting. I love talking to you. But do you think the quality of circus is better under circumstances where you may not enjoy it, but it's what you have to do?
First, you need to defining what means quality. Circus doesn't matter what you do. It's a performing arts.
Yeah.
It's on the stage. Okay,
Yes.
it's on the stage. That has to be enjoyed by audience.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, from that point of view, the circus, yes, the quality is better because you had more people access to the circus. You have more people enjoy watching the circus. The approaching of it, each individual element. For example, the skill. If you say that a degree of skill, some skill not improving, but overall presentation as a creation of artistic, yes, the quality is far better than before. Lots of skill, forget it. There's no chance to learn it. In my view, they ever have that chance because you don't have a luxury time. You come to the age of fast changing.
Mm.
You don't have a 5 years and learn one skill and you can use that skill for another 15 years. There is no place for a sustainable and a long-term difficult learning and then you're expecting survive for 10, 15 years. No,
I
they
see.
have other elements, other methods to make the show more interesting than a particular skill, a particular degree of difficulty. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. And it's super interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that one of the degree of difficulty is not the whole. The
Uh-huh.
whole show is much bigger than one of the
Right.
amazing skills.
5-10 years to be able to do a one-arm handstand on the slack wire while it's going upside down. And also you're on a unicycle spinning a plate on your other hand.
Yeah, there is another meaning to make a show interesting.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
of course, yeah, sure. If you have that luxury approaching, you have someone give you $1 million, you just do training. Don't worry about your
Wouldn't it be
future.
nice?
Yeah, yeah. If you have that condition, sure. If you don't have that condition, find a way interesting on the stage,
Yeah.
and you can survive, and you can continue creating. You can enjoy the performing career.
Mr. Liu, it was so lovely talking to you today.
Nice to talk to you. Okay, remember this.
Tell me.
Success is the instant performing arts. They show you on the stage, you enjoy it immediately, you get a return. Yeah, you watch it, enjoy it, or you disappear.
That was my interview with Mr. Liu. It was so great to have him on the show. And I think what's so valuable is that he has such first of all, a rich and deep and long history of circus, and that he has such a unique perspective working in circus in both the East at a very specific time in history. And when I say the East, I mean China. Or I guess we say East relative to what he would call the West, or more Eurocentric places like Australia. even though it's kind of odd to say Australia is the West because it's also geographically in that same region of the world. But anyway, it was interesting to hear about this financial philosophy of communism or socialism, where the support of the art was on the basis that it was something the government believed that people had a right to. Now, let's not get this twisted. This wasn't all sunshine and roses, right? Mao also enacted this thing in 1966 called the Cultural Revolution. It went on for 10 years. He killed over 2 million people. He turned the arts into a propaganda machine. So troops like the Nanjing Troop we didn't really talk about this in the interview, but troops like the Nanjing Troop would reenact battles that China had with other countries, or they would be in charge of creating these huge, elaborate shows based on the life of Chairman Mao. So, yes, the communists were funding the arts, and it sounds really great, but the artists themselves, for a particular amount of time, didn't really have a lot of control over what they were creating. And at one point, what this interview kind of turned into, and I thought it was really cool, was this exploration of East versus West, socialism versus capitalism, or I should say communism versus capitalism, and how the arts function within those two different financial philosophies. So in the communist structure, the support for the arts was on the basis that this was a core value of humanism. It was funded very well. You had this company or troupe that basically selected you. They groomed you. They paid you to train for 5 years to get very, very good at circus. And you knew leaving the training that you would have a job. You had immediately resources. You had everything taken care of during schooling. Mr. Lu even mentioned people did your laundry. They cooked for you. You had everything at your disposal. So all you had to focus on was being the best circus artist you can be. Now, again, the con of that is you don't have a lot of mobility within the system, right? If you didn't want to be a circus artist anymore, you didn't really have a lot of a choice. You didn't get to choose what contracts you worked for. You didn't get to choose if there was something really cool and compelling that you wanted to do with a group of people. In the Chinese training, you do not really have a say over what disciplines you'll study. You can express maybe a preference and figure out what you enjoy. But the philosophy there is that the teachers know more than the students about circus and what discipline that student would benefit from learning, where they could best fulfill the needs of the troupe and really optimize their performance. The downside of this is there's a rigidity to an understanding of every discipline in this structure. Like Mr. Lu was saying with doubles trapeze, how he had this idea that base had to be at least 30 kilos heavier than the flyer. 30 kilos is a lot of weight. 30 kilos, hold on, let me look at what 30 kilos is 66 pounds. So basically what they're saying is that in order to do doubles trapeze, you need to be a flyer and find a base who is 66.139 or 30 kilos heavier than you. Or you need to be a base who finds a flyer who's that less than you. I usually cut things out about weight in this podcast. I know in this art form, disordered eating is a huge issue, and I feel like weight can be very triggering. But I thought it was interesting how in this discussion, what it led to was a conversation about how in Australia, or in a more Western application of circus, that rigidity and those standards didn't matter as much, because what was valued over that was an exploration of artistic expression. The outcome being maybe something that's not as huge and dynamic and sensational, but could be moving and have its own aesthetic merit and artistic value in other ways. And then the other thing that Mr. Lu talked about in the Chinese style of circus was this family bonding that happened with the people you go through this training with. He compared it to the military, or another fraternal bond where they feel like a family. They make these really lasting bonds because they're together for so long. Now, the con of this is that it's very difficult to have a lot of cultural exchange with other people on other contracts that you're on, but you got your people. You're not alone. In Western contracts, a lot of the time, or when you're working, you kind of show up and you're with a new group of people all the time, and you hope that you're with a friend, or you like, it would be awesome to work with near your boyfriend or whatever. But you don't really, it can be very lonely to work in that kind of way versus a more Eastern way, which is that you have this big troupe that you're always around. So there's not one that I can see that's like better than the other, you know, like we could say that in Western arts and Western circus, we have this freedom of expression, but let's not forget that what determines how art is funded in a capitalist society is what the market defines as valuable, what the market defines as beautiful, what people want to pay for. And if that market has had oppressive structures of racism and patriarchal leanings that are a bit misogynistic, then the art that culture creates may not necessarily be representative of the diverse population. In some ways, it can be just as oppressive as the communist propaganda of Chairman Mao. I think something Mr. Lu didn't do in the interview, and I don't want to do it either, is really place any kind of judgment on either philosophical system or methodology of artistic creation. Because ultimately, and he says this so beautifully, it comes down to the enjoyment. His enjoyment of being on stage, his enjoyment of teaching, his enjoyment of passing on this knowledge. Because no matter which way you're coming from, ultimately, circus is a career that will last 15, 20, maybe 30 years if you're lucky. Mr. Lu is a huge outlier to say that he has been performing or training people for 55 years is incredible. And so you have to find enjoyment. If you want to read a little bit more about Chinese circus, about Mr. Lu, about Mao Zedong, about the Fruit Fly Circus, or the National Institute of Circus Arts in Melbourne, Australia, I have included a whole bunch of resources in the show notes, so you can go check them out at my website, www.theartistathlete.com. I'm also on Instagram at _artist_athlete. My Facebook page is The Artist Athlete. And if you love what you're listening to, go to patreon.com/theartistathlete and sign up to become a Patreon today. Thanks for listening. I'll talk at you next week, friends, fans, and enemies. The Artist Athlete podcast is supported solely by donations from people like you. Here's what some of those people have to say.
Hi everyone, this is Allie Cooper, owner and coach at the Radical Movement Factory in Santa Cruz, California. I love supporting the Artist Athlete podcast and the amazing community Shannon has created here. I teach rope and fabric and have a circus conditioning app available on iTunes called Cirque Plus. You can follow me on Instagram at AllieCooper_, and if you find yourself in California, come say hi.
Hi, I'm Leah. I hate conditioning. So I created the ABCs of Fitness, a fun, full program of active flexibility, body weight, and cardio with personal daily check-ins to motivate you wherever you are and whatever discipline you do. Join our next 19-day check-in challenge and slide into my DMs on Instagram at ABCs of Fitness.
Aloha! My name is Beth Russell, and I live on the beautiful island of Maui, Hawaii. I am an aerial artist and movement instructor specializing in chakra yoga to keep me balanced and grounded. I play with silks, trapeze, lyra, rope, acro, aerial yoga and dance, slacklining, pole, bungee, and climbing. Really anything that goes up and allows me to explore 3D space. You can find my dedicated aerial page on Instagram at Maui Aerialist. If you find yourself coming to Maui, let's play.
Hey there, friends, fans, and enemies. This is Chris Alston, Patreon of the Artist Athlete podcast. Straps artist and lyra performer and acrobat out of Greenville, South Carolina. So if you're ever passing through, make sure to stop in and see me and my friends. We have a wonderful space and we'd love to see you.
Hi, my name is Erica Lee. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm an aerialist. I teach performing arts to elementary school during the day and do pole and sling and rope by night. I really, really like the Artist Athlete podcast because it gives me a lot of circus goals to look forward to. It gives me a lot of insight on what's going on around the world in circus, and that's why I'm Patreon.
Hello all. Thank you for tuning in to the Artist Athlete podcast. I am Opal Schwartz from Minneapolis, Minnesota. If you're ever in the city, feel free to stop by the Aviary Minneapolis. It's a great time. With that, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week, and goodbye.
Hey there, artists and athletes. This is Andy Smith, owner and artistic director at Saltaire Circus School in Jacksonville Beach, Florida. And I want to thank you for contributing to the Artist Athlete podcast. If you ever find yourself down in Florida, come check us out. Whether you're an artist, athlete, or someone ordinary just looking to be extraordinary, we have a place for you.